People are lining up, sometimes for hours, at precious metal dealer stores in Calgary to sell or buy. For a closer look at the precious metals market, we're joined now by Chris Pollock. He's the founder and managing partner of Canada Gold that has 18 locations across the continent, including 2 in Calgary. We reached him via Zoom from Berlin, Germany, where he's at the World Money Fair. So is this really a gold rush? I mean, what is happening with gold and silver prices right now?
Yeah, this is pretty unprecedented. We've been in the precious metals business in Canada since 2008, and we opened our 2 Calgary stores in 2010. And we've been through a lot of turbulent times in the market. We certainly saw a real increase in the demand for physical precious metals during the early days of COVID, when people were looking for a secure investment. And so we had a lot of big demand in early and mid 2020. But the demand that we've been seeing in Calgary in November and December 2025 and really accelerating into January 2026 is record setting for us.
That's really interesting. So what's behind all these huge price increases right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're seeing a lot of different things that are driving the gold price, I think, and the silver price as well. I think the first thing to keep in mind is that when there's geopolitical uncertainty, talk by the U.S. president about annexing Greenland, for example, this makes people look for a desirable safe haven investment, and gold certainly fits the bill. We're also seeing some weakening of the U.S. dollar and strong demand from investors and central banks who are looking for a hedge against inflation. But I think the most interesting thing that's playing into precious metals prices is the increase in industrial demand for silver. Silver is used in data centers, it's used in solar cells, it's used in electric vehicles. And when silver is put into these electric uses, it's usually lost forever and not recycled. Industrial uses of silver are taking up about 80% of silver production, and it's just not leaving that many ounces of silver for local investors to buy. And so the demand is just outstripping the supply for retail investors.
Wow. So I hear what you're saying about gold and how global instability often means people will invest in gold because they see it as something that's very safe. But in terms of what's happening right now with silver specifically, how unique is that? So
over the last 50 years, silver has had 2 big price increases, but and famously in the 1980s, back in late 1979, 1980, the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market, and silver prices peaked at around $50. But that record in silver prices stood until just the last 12 months or so. We've rocketed through that, and silver is trading at about $158 Canadian. This is really quite unprecedented. And because of that, people who are looking for silver are scrambling for a relatively small number of physical ounces. And like you mentioned in your introduction, we're seeing lineups around the stores. We've had as many as 25 people waiting outside our 2 Calgary locations, just trying to get their hands on a few ounces of physical precious metal to diversify their portfolio.
That's interesting. So it's not just people trying to sell. People are looking to buy right now as a perceived safe investment strategy.
Yeah, we're seeing 2 main transactions in the silver market. One is there are people who have held on to Canadian silver coins from a long time ago. In 1968 and earlier, 1968 and earlier, coins in Canada were actually made of silver. They were 80% silver typically. And so if you have a quarter in a drawer at home from the early 1960s or before that, the silver prices in it are actually worth almost $25. As of the time of this interview, I just checked, and they're about $23.70.
Wow.
So you're up almost 100 times on your investment just by simply holding on to a quarter. So if you have these quarters in your drawers, people are often selling those. On the other hand, there's investors who are looking to cash in on the increased demand of silver, and those people tend to be buying bullion products. So they're coming into the store looking for silver maple leaf coins or American silver eagle coins that are very pure and are perceived as a good hold of value.
So aside from, old coins, pre-1968 coins, what kinds of things are people typically bringing in right now?
Yeah, the 2 heaviest categories of silver by the number of ounces we're seeing. First is the old Canadian coins. In the industry, they're typically called junk coins, although as you can see, if they're worth 100 times their face value, you can hardly call them junk.
It's not junk.
It's not junk, exactly. And then the second thing is silver flatware. So these would be silver forks, silver platters, tea serving sets that were very popular as wedding gifts in decades past, and now they're just a real valuable thing that's been passed on through generations. And so we're seeing a lot of young folks folks who've inherited these silver items in a generational transfer of wealth, and they're looking to cash them in now that prices are at a record to make investments in real estate as real estate prices are dropping, or education.
So then, what does your company do with all the coins and the jewelry and the silverware that people bring in? What happens to it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I'm a coin collector at heart, and so if somebody brings in a bunch of silver coins, we do have our staff go through them, look for rare years, and if we find some rare years there, we'll pay the customer extra. So if you're sitting on a 1947 or 1948 silver dollar, those years have low mintages and they're worth way more than the silver value, and we pay the customer accordingly.
Wow.
And then those are sold in our coin store. But if you just sell a common year of a circulating coin from the 1960s or a flatware set that's not in great condition, we send that into the Royal Canadian Mint. They refine it into pure silver, and then they deliver it back to us for a small fee in the form of silver maple leaf coins. And then we then turn around and sell those to customers who are looking for a bullion grade investment product.
Wow. So certainly exciting times for precious metal folks and numismatic folks like yourself. But where do you see prices headed, and how long could this last?
Yeah, so I'm pleasantly surprised that the silver and gold price rally has gone on for this long. There's certainly a lot of volatility in the market. We've had some of the biggest price changes intraday over the last couple of days as compared to the last 20 years. I wouldn't be surprised if the silver price rally continued. I'm here, as you mentioned in the preamble, in Berlin, and I met with some colleagues at various Canadian banks and at the Royal Canadian Mint. And the consensus seems to be that we're in a period of volatility. So we're going to see a lot of big intraday and intramonth changes in precious metals prices. There seems to be an expectation that the price increase and the demand for physical precious metal will continue for a period of time. The projections seem to suggest that the prices will hold in the $80 to $100 range, so that might suggest they would settle down a little bit. But as I mentioned, there's only a little bit of physical silver that's circulating relative to the industrial uses. And so when customers are competing for a small amount of the supply, prices can certainly move up a lot before they settle back down. So I think the best prediction, as Rockefeller said, was we can expect volatility.
So then if someone is sitting on, grandma's silver tea service collecting dust in the cupboard, I mean, should they sell now, or should they wait a little bit longer?
Well, now is the best time there has ever been in terms of the past. So the best day from January 28th back until any day in history to sell is January 28th. The more interesting question you're asking is, will January 29th or January 30th be better?
Yeah.
And if I had a way to predict it, I wouldn't be selling the silver to the Royal Canadian Mint at the moment. But I think it's relatively safe. You'd certainly have no regrets selling at a price that's increased 10 times over the last decade or so. I'd be a little bit more careful about a coin collection, though. I have an interest in collecting coins and numismatics. And so if you've inherited a coin collection, I would say it's probably worth selling a lot of the lower grade, more common coins. Those will never be that interesting to collectors. But if there's a couple of rare years that are passed on as family heirlooms, it's probably not worth liquidating those, even if your quarter is worth $25. It's always nice to have something interesting to pass on to relatives for Christmas. So I'd say it's a reasonable time to take some money off the table and sell some of your physical precious metals, but always reasonable to hold on to some of them as well.